Now, in terms of the next step, I don't know what the next step is, but clearly in terms of physical infrastructure, you've got a hell of a lot of stuff, and I know you need that extra space, but in general, you have an incredible physical infrastructure well, in comparison to Britain. So the question now to me is really, how does one develop the soft infrastructure, the soft enabling infrastructure, so that the creators, the potential creators, the new reinventors of the new Umeå, where are they going to operate from, and how are they going to operate from? So that question to me is perhaps something that the proposal for 2014 should perhaps address, about creation spaces in just as one of its focuses. And clearly we had many discussions within the library to the extent that is the library, if I say library, I like the word library, but nevertheless when I say library I have an image of what library is. But supposing we said this place where we're in now was a centre of curiosity and imagination, how would it change if it was redefined as that? Within that, clearly, you'd need some books, less books, perhaps, but other things. What would it physically, how would it manifest itself if the library were a centre for curiosity and imagination of general age groups? And I certainly think the physical thing is quite important, because as we were wandering around the library, we kept on seeing these shelves in rows. At least this is curved. I just like curves. I prefer curves to straight lines. But look, there are lots of spaces in the library where people are trying to sit and, I think, behave in a slightly different way, but the physical structure is forcing them in a certain way. And here is one of the best libraries I know, which is the library in Vancouver, which, thank God, is round. No, I live in a house called the Round, by the way. I'm delighted. Thank God it's called the Round rather than the Square. But anyway, this round library is, I think, quite an interesting library to look at in terms of its spaces and so on, if one was considering what a different type of library might be like. And the same role, I think, is quite interesting, that you're called the Norrlands Opera, and in fact, you're only really half an opera, aren't you? You're lots of other things at the same time, and I quite like the idea that that notion has been sort of changed, and it's sort of more democratic. It feels more like a sort of Italian opera. I know some, La Scala is very like that, but some other Italian operas are very sort of, in a sense, populist or popular. But you can think institutions in different ways. Just because you're thinking about the swimming pool, I just remembered another swimming pool in Roubaix. Now, this was a swimming pool which they decided to close rather than a new one you're opening. And then the museum said, we need a location for our museum. So the swimming pool guy said, put it in the swimming pool. I'm not suggesting you do that, by the way. But what it does show is we can think differently about how cultural institutions work, because of course on that water it's sometimes covered, they have fashion shows, all sorts of things happen on that water. And so the experience, sort of what I'm really saying is, the way we've thought about cultural institutions comes from the 19th century. We have objects, the object place called the museum. We have books, the book place, etc., etc. So when you look at some of the interesting institutions, they are quite interesting mixes. And as well, in relation to that, and this is a challenge for me, this is Bryant Park, New York. You're going to see all of this because you're all going to go to New York to collect that prize, is a Wi-Fi park sponsored by Google. And people are doing lots of things. And so I've been really thinking about how here in a winter city, what are the other kinds of meeting places you can create within a winter city, which in a sense embody the same things that these two images are embodying here. And one of the thoughts I want to leave you with here is this question of future-proofing. Because too often we think about what is our next thing, what are we going to do? And we use today's thinking, let's say on libraries or something else, to do something which will take 6 years to do. So you've used today's thinking. By the time it's finished in 6 years, it's really behind. So if we're thinking about future-proofing 25 years ahead and then thinking backwards, we might then say, like this thing, this is a hospital. Now, this hospital, and this is another hospital, there's something quite interesting about this hospital. If I reconceive this hospital and someone said to me, why is that incinerator so big when I feel ill? You get the idea. I mean, that is already sending out the wrong message in a hospital to have the incinerator next, just in your face. Now, if I call a hospital a centre for the sick, the way I conceive it and build it is completely differently if I conceive of the hospital as a centre for well-being. Just like if I take a school, this is a sort of tertiary school for 18-year-olds, another building that says no. If this is a factory for drilling in knowledge, which it looks like, or I call it a centre for curiosity and imagination, rather like I described perhaps a library, you would never build it like that. It would be a different structure. It would be completely different. Here's another culture. I don't want to talk about these cultural institutions that all look like this. But anyway, there are lots of them that look like this. They're all buildings that say no and are not communicating. And when we're thinking about the next step on Umeå, which is about the step that people are choosing a city that is attractive, if they're faced, and I'm not saying you have these buildings, with this sort of physical fabric, then it's going to make life a bit more difficult. So one of the questions I asked at dinner last night at a group of people I said, is Umeå beautiful? I just asked the question very naively. And in unison they said no. Now, in this next step, actually beauty is an incredibly important thing because, as we said, ugly buildings rarely, sometimes, but very rarely, suddenly become beautiful. Beautiful buildings rarely, and I know we can argue what is beauty, I understand all that. Anyway, so that's a question I want to ask you. Is it beautiful? Has it got fantastic design and so on? Obviously, these are some of the spaces that you're considering. I mean, is that building in the back there beautiful? I don't know. Is too much of Umeå over-engineered? This road, I was waiting on this road trying to find some traffic. So, but you know what I mean? Normally, you're trying to do the opposite, which is trying to find some empty space. I had to wait here for quite a while. Oh, there's some traffic. Click. I've got it. Now, is this road over-engineered or not? I hope you're not leaving, Jan, because I'm talking about over-engineering. Anyway, I mean, all I'm raising the question for all of you is this beautiful and so on. Now, here's a funny little trick, a little transformation. This is just in Pittsburgh. So you've got lots of blank walls. You've got lots of things like that. And again, I'm not saying you do it, but you've got lots of dark. Or this. You've got lots of things, the equivalent of this. Let's just look at this. This is very cheap. This costs $3,800 a year to maintain. Traffic engineers get a bit worried now. They get worried at that point. Very worried there. Because this is in Pittsburgh, and these are Marilyn Monroe's lips. And this is Marilyn Monroe looking at you. Okay, but we could perhaps have that. That would be okay, and that's all right. Or that. That's just light. But I mean, given that you could quite easily do these things, there are so many possibilities of cheap transformation that really, I have this new currency called the asphalt currency. And what you do is you say, how many roads are you building this year, asphalt, in a city? And if you consider 1 kilometre of asphalt or road and said, what if we use that 1 kilometre for something else? What would have more effect? The kilometre of road being built, the asphalt, or the alternative expenditure on that?